Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. And I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, Managing Partner here at Northwestern Mutual. Today we have special guest Shaun Trudell, President, that's the second time I said president, not said it right, President and owner of Automation Arts. Topic for today's podcast is accountability as a leader. And I love that Shaun brought us this idea around accountability and leadership. Accountability is, or in general, so it's something that I think we're lacking as a society. I also think that most people have a negative connotation with the word accountability. So I'm excited to get into this topic. I think it's going to be great. But before we do, Shaun, tell us about your background and a little bit about yourself so our audience gets to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shaun Trudell, I'm the president of Automation Arts, as Josh said. Automation Arts is a commercial and residential AV integrator. So we do audio-video installs for commercial clients, which would be in the corporate space, higher education, hospitality, hotels, sporting venues, bars and restaurants. So everything from television, speakers, audio conferencing, video conferencing, which is a very hot topic right now. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff, and then residentially, everything from lighting control to home theaters to HVAC control, automation, all those types of things. So company's been around for about a little over 25 years, changed ownership in 2012. We had about 4 employees at that point, and now, about 8 years later, we have 2 locations, one in Madison, one in Milwaukee, and we're up to 47 employees total now. So kind of a big hockey stick growth from 2012. But it's been fast, it's been good, we've had a lot of good success, and we've got a lot of great people, so I think that's what makes it work out. Yeah.
So that's about Automation Arts. So tell us a little bit, because I know you're a family guy, and we've known each other for a long time before.
Yeah.
This, so tell us about the fam. Tell us about your background growing up.
Yeah, grew up in Milwaukee. Went to high school there. Obviously, graduated. Went to Carroll University, or it was Carroll College when I went there, but now Carroll University. Went there, was a degree in fitness management with a minor in health and coaching. How I got into AV is beyond me, but here we are. Was there till about 2003 and moved to Madison to work at Automation Arts as an installer, and then kind of lived here ever since. I love the area. I love the town, the space. It's just everything about Madison is nice. I love it. So got 2 kids. Aaron and Molly, 11 and going on 9. So, and then my wife Mandy, who was a teacher for 19 years in Wanakee, who recently, she likes to say she retired, but I call it a gap year for her. So
a gap year.
so she's doing that, but does a lot of stuff with our rental properties and that kind of stuff, and shuffles the kids around as sports are taking over, basketball and soccer and football, and so kids are very active in that stuff. So
CEO of Trudell household.
Absolutely. There we go. 100%. 100%.
And Mandy's a sweetheart as well, so we'll say hi to Mandy while we can. So we got about Automation Arts, got a little bit about yourself. At what age did you start realizing, or start developing, or realize the need to develop leadership skills? Coming out, 2003, you're an installer, right? Mm-hmm. So you're pretty low on the totem pole.
Yep.
What was it before then, and maybe some high school, or maybe some sports, or was it going into the career that you started realizing that?
Yeah, I think from a career standpoint, probably 4 years ago is when I think where I really started focusing when I became the president of Automation Arts, that I had to fine-tune those skills. And so I think kind of reflecting back on that question would be, probably takes me back to high school and football, and when I played football, and I think there was kind of an inherent nature in me to be a leader and always want to do more and be more successful. So I think some of the coaches that I had at that time kind of helped, steer me down that path of how to be a leader, how to, be one of the guys that on the team that the other kids look up to, or, make good decisions. And, I think too, even throughout my career, as I think about it, when there's decisions that need to be made, nobody wants to make them. I'm kind of one of those guys that would be like, yeah, I'll step up and make that decision. And if that falls on me, it falls on me, right? So, and then, a couple other people, my wife's father, my father-in-law was a huge impact in my life, only for a short time as he passed away. He was 58. And then as that kind of transitioned, her uncle was a big, is still a big influence in my life, and he's been very successful in his career. So he's kind of one of those guys I lean to when there's big decisions or things that I need to, milestones in my career of how do I handle this, how, give me some advice here, So those are some of the leaders.
Well, that's good. So you went from installer, and then there was a time where you left the company, right?
Yep.
And started your own?
Yep.
So talk about that transition, going out on your own, successes, failures, and how you came back to it.
Yep. Always been a huge risk taker, and that's probably, Mandy is the yin to my yang, right? So I'm super aggressive in probably all of my risk taking, and where she's like, whoa, don't jump in yet. Let's talk about this, right? And I'm like, I'm already halfway, down the pipe of getting there. So worked for Automation Arts for a couple years as an installer. Me and one of the other guys that were there were like, let's try and do this on our own. Let's figure out if, the American dream, right? Have a house, have a kid, own a business, be an entrepreneur. Let's do it, and it was.
And you were how old at the time?
Would have been 24.
Okay.
So height of the economy, everything was great, so screw it. Let's sell everything we got and see what we can do. So we opened a location in Milwaukee. He lived in Milwaukee and I lived in Madison, and we just kind of traveled back and forth. We had contacts in both locations, so we're trying to just organically build that business in both locations. We actually had a storefront at one point in Milwaukee. Downturn in the economy hits, we get pregnant, it's like, now I gotta make big boy decisions. You can't just throw caution to the wind. You've got responsibilities, accountability to, my wife, kids, those kind of things. And so we had to make some hard decisions and left the company and went back into the workforce.
Yeah. And you used the word, but we were talking about failure. What did that mean to you? How did that affect you psychologically?
It was tough. I think nobody likes to fail, and so when it didn't work out, it was like, what could I have done better? What could we have done better? And it was just the two of us, so we were running everything from the installs to the sales to the accounting to the ordering to, cleaning the office to, doing it all. And I think that's hard to do at 24, and, you want to still be young and have fun and do those things. And so I think there were some sacrifices that you have to make, but yeah, I think mentally it was a big step back for me. And it was like, and then to go back to work for somebody where it was like, I made my own schedule. Now It's like, you got to do this. You got to be here on this day, punch the clock. That drove me insane. That was tough.
So what was your biggest learning lesson if you look back at that now? I'm sure at that time it's hard to see through the, forest, but now looking back 10, almost 15 years probably?
Yeah, I think looking back at it now, it's really about, you need a team if you want to go far, if you want to have a big organization and be successful. You need people, and you need to trust people to do their jobs in order to really be successful. You can't do it all on your own. And I think that's always been kind of a downfall of mine. It's just been like wanting to have all the control so that I know exactly how it goes, and to trust somebody that if you delegate it or have them do something, that they're going to do it, and they're going to do it to the best of their ability. So that's always been a struggle of mine, and it's something that I have to be aware of as I'm a leader and putting people into other positions to go, this is what I'm expecting of you.
Right.
How do I hold you accountable? No different than how do they hold me accountable for giving them the tools, the training, and the coaching to be successful.
So I think that's a struggle for a lot of leaders. I know I struggled with it a lot early on. Do you have any general rules of thumb or how you start to overcome that, where you're, delegating and trusting, but also holding accountable as well, which is kind of our topic today.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think we just had a really big planning session at the end of the year, a strategic planning session as to, how we're going to continue to grow, and the guys that are in certain positions and managing more people. There was one point, I think, when we had 29 employees that I did every single review. And Wow. It was like, that was an insane amount of reviews. And I'm like,
over what period? Like a week or two?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was like nonstop, and like, I think there was one day where there was 8 reviews in one day. And it was like, that's all I did all day. At the end of that day, I was so exhausted. You know, it was a great day because you're learning a lot about the company, the people, where they want to go. But it's just exhausting from like an emotional, mental processing all of that and reacting to questions and all of those things. So putting that kind of organization of, okay, you're in charge of this group, this group, this group, and this group. You know, how do you manage all of those people? So I think through our strategic planning session, that was like the biggest feedback I got from everybody was like, you got to trust me to do the things that you're asking me to do, you know, and like, so it's like, okay, like that's what I'm going to really do and focus on. So it's, and I was just telling someone this week, like I still have a lot of anxiety about it, but I have to trust that they're doing those things.
Yeah.
And so getting through a lot of that, you know, for the last month or two has been tough, but I'm like, I have to then figure out how to go in and coach and go, how are you doing? Tell me about what you're doing and what struggles are you having, so that I can then understand how I can help them better versus telling them how to just do their job.
Yeah, it's trust but verify, right?
Right. Or
inspect what you expect. So what's the risk if you don't trust them?
They'll leave.
And what's the risk if you do trust them?
They could screw up, right?
What's the bigger risk then?
You know, I'm accountable for it.
But what's the bigger risk? Either they screw up or they leave, right? What do you think?
In my mind, they leave.
Yeah.
I
would agree. I just wanted to see where you're headed with it.
Yeah, because our people is what makes our company amazing. Like you can get the boxes of stuff that we sell from anybody, you know, but how our people interact with you and the customer service you get and the experience you get is what makes it really amazing. So losing people, and it's like the amount of time it takes to spend somebody new in that role, especially a leadership role, would be immense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I work with and have worked with service industry people are potentially like landscaping companies, and project managers are always getting fought over. So I can imagine like that frontline leadership that you're referencing. I'm sure in your industry and competitors, like that's a hot need, you know, so that's something that people are probably fighting over. So if you don't trust them and they don't feel ownership over their own craft, they could leave. Or if you don't provide the benefits that another competitor might be providing, they could leave. And I think I truly believe that people leave people. So if you're treating them right, if you're investing in them, if you're getting their vision like you were through these reviews, even if you probably shouldn't be the one doing all 29,
right,
but connecting with them through their vision and what they want to do, like there's a higher likelihood they're going to stay. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still offhand stuff that we can't control, like a spouse of theirs gets a job across the country, and as much as they love you, this happened to me last year, and I love that person but their spouse had a great offer, and they had to go.
Yep.
So there's still going to be one-offs like that, but you can control the majority of it, I think.
Mm-hmm. You know, we talk a lot to our employees too, just about, you know, there is a proper way to exit, you know, if you have to exit, you know, and if you're just truly, there's times where, you know, guys just truly aren't happy in what they're doing. And, you know, we had one guy that kind of approached me like that and was just like, you know, I'm just struggling with where I'm at personally. And he just felt like having a career change was going to be the best thing for him, you know. And so having that conversation with him and going, that's perfect, how do we support you in that, and how do we make sure that your exit doesn't leave us with some large gap? So can we plan better to make sure that we both land on good feet and we leave that door open, we don't burn any bridges? Maybe there's an opportunity for you to come back down the road.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, so I'm so glad you went there. Like, Madison's 2 degrees of separation. Like, if I didn't know you, I could run into Ben Scharf at the country club and be like, hey, introduce me to your president. And now I know Shaun Trudell. Like, there's literally 1 degree of separation all across Madison. You're one person away from knowing another person. So it is very, very small. And especially, like, you never know what the future is going to hold for you. So like you didn't necessarily think when you left Automation Arts that you'd be coming back, I'm sure.
Right.
So
no, it was a little weird getting that phone call, you know, and especially kind of like not even from the old owner, you know. I was like, what's going on there?
Yeah. It was the new owner, right?
Yeah.
So like that, sometimes life is full circle, right? So I'm going totally off script here at this point.
That's
so.
fine. I love it.
So what systems of accountability do you put in to help you with trusting delegation?
So are you familiar with RACI, the term RACI?
Explain it.
So
it might be.
There's so I do some leadership training and sales training stuff through Lift Consulting.
Yeah.
And so Matt Pletzer, who's been doing a great job of helping us a lot with strategic planning and some of that stuff. So when we did that, and it's a term that I've seen and kind of, but haven't really implemented it. So RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, right? So if there's initiatives, if there's things going on, if there's goals or specific things that are happening within a division or that you need somebody to be in charge of, you can use that as a model to go, who's responsible for it, who's ultimately going to be accountable for it, who needs to be consulted, and who needs to be informed on it. So with that model, they can kind of look at it and go, this is my task. They can fill that out, and then the accountability goes to the proper people. And if someone, is like, it's helped me a lot with like Ben, because Ben is, he's there, but he's not there 100% of the time. So as I'm going through my day, it's like, are there things that I need to consult him on, or are there things that he needs to be informed on?
So you use it pretty broad-based.
Yeah, all over the place. So, and I think it helps too. Then it gives direct, information as to who's responsible for that, that either task or responsibility, or, like we've been rolling out a couple of different, we had a new CRM and ERP rollout this year. So there was a lot of tasks. There's a lot of things that had to get done. And it was like, okay, you have to champion this. So RACI, who's responsible? Great, Mike's responsible. Who's accountable? Ultimately, I'm accountable for that, right? So I have to know who's involved with that. Who's being consulted on it? Are there other people, project managers, installers? Who needs to give us information to make sure that gets through the system properly? And then who needs to be informed on it? And there's sometimes where your name may fall in multiple spots. But I think it gives everybody kind of a good outlook and a frame of how they can be accountable and who's responsible for what. Because a lot of times you can have tasks or goals and there's no deadline set, there's no accountability, there's who's really responsible for it. You talk about it, it sounds like a great idea, everybody leaves the room, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, now what? Who's going to do it?
And then you, as the owner or the person accountable, feel like you need to take it back over when you were really trying to get this off to your plate to the person that should be owning it.
Right.
So you end up stepping in. Yeah. So it ends up being essentially a spin cycle.
Yep. And that's where I've again, the struggle of how do I delegate that, right? It's like, okay, you're responsible for this, but you're not getting it there. I'm accountable for it, but I can't drag every initiative to the finish line. So together, let's figure it out, right? You're still going to be responsible for this because we have tasked you with it. So let's get it going. How do we do it?
So how do you create those relationships then? Because I believe that this was told to me by an old business coach. I actually happened to see him last night in Iowa, so it was good to see him again. But it just rings in my head that accountability without a relationship is nothing more than harassment.
Yeah.
And so I've had that stuck in my head because my dad would repeat it as well. But so how do you build those relationships so that when you hold them accountable or you have to go into that boss mode, that they're not taking it as harassment but as coaching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of it is just spending that one-on-one time, right? And so as my role has continued to change, I used to do a lot of sales and stuff too, where I've kind of, like you, stepped kind of back from that. And how do you then build the relationships with the people that are underneath you so that they can be successful? So I have to make time to go in, and spend that one-on-one time with them and really get down to how they're spending their day. What are the things they're struggling on, and asking them those questions and start building those. I think the leadership group that's kind of underneath me are a lot of guys that I've worked with for a long time and that I've had great relationships. Some I've only known for a few years. But I think it's then just that communication of back and forth. Like I can think of a couple of really good instances. We hired a new director of engineering and programming, And I knew him for about a year. A great guy. I mean, we'd go out and drink beers and, get along really well. But then, when it comes down to the business and the department and how do we get things, his constant feedback was like, I need feedback from you. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, you're really hard to read. You don't really give me a ton of feedback. And that's where it's like, for me, I was like, okay, I had to step back and go, well, why am I not giving him feedback? Well, I wasn't giving him feedback because I trusted what he did and he was doing a great job, but I wasn't telling him that.
So he was thinking the opposite or feeling the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I'm in your office, that's a bad thing. Like, we're trying to figure out why you're not doing something, so, but he was like, yeah, well, I need a little bit of feedback to know that I'm going down the right path.
Yeah.
So I think, again, that's where you have to step back and have that awareness to go, what do they need from me that I'm not giving them? Because it's easy to get wrapped up in the things you're required to do day to day. But if you're not spending that one-on-one time to build that relationship so that they know they can come to you or they know that you're at least approving and helping them grow, then otherwise you'll struggle.
Yeah, so I think about that there is, my team has been talking a lot about love languages, which is kind of interesting to talk about in the workplace because that book was really built for, relationships, marriages, stuff of that nature. But it's so applicable to the workplace as well because although you may not be talking about or necessarily using the word love with an employee, some people might, depending on the relationship, and it's a different type of love than you have for your spouse. But like some people's love language, like this gentleman you just spoke about, was words of affirmation, at least what it sounds like without him taking the quiz or reading the book you guys together. But words of affirmation, he needed that from you. Right. What I've learned is, like for myself, is I learned to grow up, or I grew up without those, so I learned to develop that I didn't need them. So now I've gotten to so far, my pendulum swung so far, like I literally need 0 words of affirmation from anyone. I get that from myself. And so I have to work extra hard to make sure that those that need them, like I have to give those. Like I have to be very conscious about it because I don't need them, but most others do. Or someone else's love language might be acts of service or whatever it might be, but getting to know those by getting to know your people so that you can deliver to them what they need to get them motivated or keep them motivated.
Yeah. I probably struggle with that at home as well. Like, I'm not empathetic enough to my kids. Like my wife says that too. Like my daughter's pretty klutzy. So like for her to fall and stumble and all that, like that's just how she's been since she's been born. So like she'll fall and I'm just like, really? And she's like, well, maybe just like coddle her a little bit. She just hurt her knee. Like you're right. I got to be a little more empathetic. I got to, again, just understanding what every person needs. To react to it versus not, so that it's to carry that into work as well is the same thing,
Right.
It's like, I'm kind of like you, I don't need the affirmation, no one's patting me on the back day to day to go, hey, yeah, you're doing a great job, and my dad was never that way either, just go.
And because they were raised that way. I had a conversation with my dad, last week, about it. Because my brother who works with me, who's been on the podcast, we've had him a couple times, like he's 7 years younger. He grew up way different than I did. My dad got better at it as he grew up. But he's like, why do you think I was bad at it? I was like, because you didn't get it? He goes, yeah. So we now have this conversation and talk about it as two grown men. But, early in my 20s, like I did have some resentment about it.
Yeah.
But now, being grown and having my own kids and being my own boss and you learn. And it's like, oh, he was doing the best that he could at that time with what he knew. Right. And he got better. And so Jordan was raised with a little bit more affirmation. So it's just interesting.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably my wife chirping in my ear, right? Like, be more empathetic, dude. Be nicer to the kids, Well,
that's why you already said she's your yin, your yang, so.
Yep.
Well, and it sticks out just on the career choices, right?
Right.
You want to be an entrepreneur. She wanted to be a school teacher. I mean, there's not much more, and then, opinions may be changing on that, but at the time, being 19, 20 years ago, when she started, that's like the safest route you can take compared to someone that goes out at 24 years old and wants to start his own thing.
Yeah, and if I look at why she really wanted to do it, it was because she loved the kids, right? So her empathy levels are high, because she wants to help them, she wants to support them, she wants to be nurturing, and so that's a great profession for her. So that's again where I have to realize some of that and go, how do I be self-aware as to what I'm not providing.
And that takes real presence, being where your feet are and understanding and not thinking so forward and not trying to rush through things or rush through conversations, understanding the impact of your words and your actions in the moment. That's tough.
Totally.
But it's what we have to do as leaders. So you mentioned Pletzer and Lift Consulting. They do phenomenal work. We've had Matt on the show. What was your guys' impetus to start using them?
Yeah.
I think that's because that's a big investment. And I know you guys have a big portion of your team there.
Mm-hmm.
So to another business owner that might be listening, that may be thinking about making an investment like that, or struggling with making that investment, what has that meant to you guys, and why did you choose to do that, and what have you learned from it?
So when I became president, it wasn't like Ben gave me a job description and said, this is what's required of you now. Right? Hey, you're president, get back to work. So it's like, all right, well, what does that mean? And it's evolved, and it's always evolving, which is a good thing. But I got invited to one of our dealer groups to speak about just the commercial integration and what we're doing. And one of the guys that I met there was doing some business coaching, and he was like, this has just been, phenomenal for me to help me kind of grow, and it's helped my team grow, and it's helped our business just be way more successful. He's like, if there's one piece of advice I could give you, it's like, find some sort of business coaching or sales coaching just to kind of help you, and it was out of the blue when Matt and Spencer were working together. Spencer did a keynote speak for us at one of our planning events, and so then he introduced me to Matt, and Matt was like, I need some video conferencing stuff, can you come in? So I went in, and it was a sales call essentially for me to him, and he really flipped it on me. He's a pro sales guy, right? So I walked out buying from him, and he didn't buy from me.
So what just happened?
Yeah, I know. Completely flipped it. Yeah, that's probably what sold me. But it was, I think, really starting to talk to him about, so what is the business coaching? What can I expect? And so they do a monthly leadership group. He's like, why don't you come just as a guest, check out the leadership group and see if it's something that you would like. And so it was a group of guys and girls from the Madison area that are either presidents, CEOs, or kind of higher up in the ranks, and just talking about issues or struggles or business practices. And so I spent 2 hours there, and it was just amazing that all these people were willing to share and kind of help other people grow and answer questions as they were going through things. So I think that's where it really started going down that path. So I did it, just me on my own for probably a year or two. And then they came out with another group called Emerging Leaders, which was a great fit for our Vice President, Ron, who was in that role. And it's like, God, I wish he could be in this leadership group. But it's like to have both of us in the leadership group at the same time would kind of squash, I think, both of our voices. So when that came up, I was like, Ron, you got to do this. Like, you'll love this. It's great stuff. So he got involved in that, and then he's been doing that for about a year. And then this year it was like, we need to get just our sales team more involved with this, so that we're all speaking the same language, so that we're all being successful. So then we just signed on with them to have our entire sales team go through that sales process and sales training, so everybody's kind of on the same path, and that they have tools to be successful, because we believe training and education is really important in our industry and in our company.
I think it's important everywhere.
Yeah.
So what I love about your story there is you humbled yourself enough to do it yourself, and you found so much value that you got the next person in line, and you both found so much value that you'd invested in your team. So this is like a 3-year evolution, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like?
Yeah. Yeah, and so we just signed a 3-year contract with them. So for the foreseeable future, we'll continue to do that, just because I see so much value in it, and our sales guys, they're all non-commissioned. So, and a lot of them don't have sales training because they're engineers, or they were, just guys that love the industry. And, so the guys that are selling now.
Or a FIAD degree or whatever you had.
Yeah, fitness management.
Fitness management, there you go.
And so, like Ron is a true blue, hunter. Like, he's a great sales guy, like, just has that, that mentality to him, and, Derek is an engineer kind of by trade and was a programmer and super techie. And so he can get really down and dirty with a customer of, this is the functionality, this is what you need. But then, Derek, how do you wrap that sale up? Let's figure out some of those tools to make you better at getting the deal
and
done.
Not everyone wants to get into the weeds with you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just them having that ability to go and fine tune, and maybe they don't take everything from it, but they take 2 or 3 things that make them better, and then that makes the organization better.
Yeah, what have you noticed, whether it's monetary or culture or whatever, regarding the training since you've gotten everyone involved?
Everybody's excited about it, which is the biggest thing, and I think, so like Eric, who does a lot of our business development, finds a lot of value in like the workshops they have, because he's bouncing around doing all the different stuff from, meeting with, clients for lunches and doing events and going to different events to try to get our name out there. So for him to have like something scheduled all the time is hard, but the workshops are great where he can just go for a day and just like dive in and get excited about something and pull a couple of nuggets out and, be successful with that portion of it. So I think the team overall is just excited about, and I think it's probably just the, hey, we're investing in you.
Yeah.
We want you to be successful. Like, we want you to have more training. And I think, again, that's where it's easier to hold somebody accountable, going, I'm investing in you, I'm giving you the training, I want you to do this. So when I hold you accountable, you can't say, well, you didn't give me the training, you didn't give me the tools, and now you're holding me accountable for something that I have no control over.
Yeah, that's so good, because I think a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, think that sending people back to school to get their MBA or get some certificate or whatever it might be is the ticket to go, just because other big corporations are doing it. And that may be the case. So I'm not trying to discredit that whatsoever. But there's so many things that could be applicable, like a sales course through Lyft Consulting, like a Dale Carnegie training, or there might be something totally applicable to an industry that I'm not familiar with that could take your team to the next level. And what you said there is about the investing in you. I was hoping you would say that is, they're excited about your investment in them. It's not actually, it may not even be that stuff is that awesome, which we know it is, but even if it wasn't, they're like, they believe in me. They're putting thousands of dollars into my development.
Yeah.
Whether it's through that, or if a corporation does believe that an MBA is the next step for someone, they invest thousands of dollars in that. They're putting their money where their mouth is, right? And so I've noticed that as well, where I've just gotten used to coaching, because I have 2 business coaches and I've always paid for them on my own, and I've done other workshops and whatnot. So I started doing that for some of the people here, where it's targeted, whether it be through Darcy Luoma, or whether it be through Matt or some others that there's some national ones that I've done. I've flown them out for, and it's like they come back so thankful and so grateful that you would do that. Yep. And I didn't, again, not being an affirmation guy, like, I didn't need necessarily the thanks, but it's nice to get, but it's like they were so empowered by that training and by that learning, and that that a company would do that for them. Like, it speaks volumes.
Yeah, we, through our planning session this year, it was almost embarrassing to say we've gone as far as we have, and we didn't have like core values defined as a company. And that was one thing. So Ben and I once a year sit down with Matt, kind of like a counseling session, right? Like, how'd the year go? Did we meet our goals? Like what do we need to work on, so that Ben and I stay really aligned on, how we're running the business. And the one topic I had for our meeting was like, what are our core values? Like, I think I know what they are, but are we on the same page? And so we kind of left that meeting with like, this is probably priority number 1 versus anything right now. Like, how have we not defined this? And so we kind of went through and talked to a bunch of people in the company of just like, what does it mean to be a part of Automation Arts culture? Because we talk a lot about culture. And so we kind of went down that path and just gathered information from a lot of the employees, and then we kind of went back and, it was like, all right, this is what I heard, this is what I heard, this is what I heard. And then we just sat down and we just put our core values, and so one of the core values is, we have to attract, empower, train, and retain. So that's one of our core values, and it's like we have to live by that. And so training our people is really important. And if you train them, inherently they'll be empowered to make decisions, right? And then hopefully you're attracting other good talent because of that. And if you do all those things, you're going to retain those people for the long term. So, and that was like for us at the beginning of the year, that was like we rolled it out to the team. The whole company understands it. We put it up on the walls. Like, it's been super impactful for us.
Right, and what you're saying there is it's not just a tagline, if you will, or just something that you felt like you had to do. And maybe you did initially. It was like, hey, I've noticed like literally every company I work with, I see core values on their walls or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What are ours? So it was a good
Right.
epiphany to have that you made it this far, grown from 4 employees to, I think, 47 you said?
Yeah.
So in 8 years' time, and didn't necessarily have those nailed down. And they weren't on the wall, but they were in your culture.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting. You continue to speak those out loud, they'll be interesting. So I just had this come to mind. So one of my core values for not only my own life, but also our culture is courage. And my 6-year-old, we were sitting on the couch, I think, having dinner that night, and she asked what the definition of courage was. And she asked Jenna, my wife, and Jenna looks at me and goes, "You want to handle this?" And I was like, "Yep, yes I do." And gave her the definition, or at least my definition of courage.
Right.
But it's funny, even, spouse calling you out, like, "Hey, you want to take this one? This
Right.
is one of your core values." So,
Teeing it up for you.
yeah, so it was good.
Well, I think what shed the light on it for us was, we had an employee that we were struggling with, and it was like, I hate losing employees or terminating or people quitting. So inherently you look in and go, what could we have done better? And we always kind of go back to like, well, it's our culture. When it was like, well, what is our culture? Like, how do you define that? Right. And so if you have the core values out there, you can like go, if you're struggling with an employee, to go grab them and go, let's go over the core values. Like, how do you feel you're doing right now with, we before me? Like, are you there? Are you not there? So I think you can use it as a coaching tool to really kind of go, we got to work through these things, and either you're going to be successful with it, or maybe it's not a fit anymore. So to be able to hire or fire all through the core values, I think, is important.
Yeah, that's really good. I just looked down because we've gotten so far off our questions. But one of them I really liked in here was, what's your favorite interview question?
So I thought about that. I have a lot of them because I do the majority of the hiring. But I really like the interview question of, what do you do on your free time? What are your hobbies? Because I think that stumps a lot of people. Like, that's
not a job question.
Right. You want to know what I do outside of work? Of course I want to know what you do outside of work. Like, what do you do for fun? And a lot of people are like, I don't know. Just, I like stuff. And you're like, but like, what excites you besides work? Like, oh no, work excites you. Come on. It's an interesting question because it catches a lot of people off guard.
Well, right, because in the interview process, and I talk about this frequently, I actually did an interview for 5 of Whitewater's top students in their AMA club and in the sales program at the business school. And so I'm on the phone with them, and they're asking about questions, and I like to ask the question, tell me a joke, or it's a demand, not a question, I should say. And that throws people off as well.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wait, why? And I don't care if your response to me is, I'm not good at remembering jokes. You had an immediate response to me. All I'm looking for in that question is, do you think quick on your feet?
Uh-huh.
Because we're throwing curveballs all the time, or, clients that'll, fire for effect.
Right.
Just to see if you stand behind your word or whatever your recommendation is. So the other piece that you mentioned there is, because you do most of the interviewing, I talked to them about was, all of you, I'm assuming, have been on a first date, and they're all like, yes. They're now thinking, where's he going with this? Like, right? I look at first couple dates and first couple interviews very similarly. is you're getting the SportsCenter top 10 of that person,
Yeah.
their interview self,
Yep.
not their true self, right? So same thing with the first date is like, way back when I would go on a first date, I'm like, I know, and same for me, like both sides of the table, right? We're giving our super, just this level of our self that's just, the surface level. We're not getting the deep stuff. We don't know someone's shit until we're 5-10 dates in.
Right.
Like, oh, there it is. There's the dark side.
The real self comes out.
Yeah. So we don't, that's why we have, in our interview process, I actually have them meet with 3 to 4 different people to see if we're getting the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And also in that, they get to know our culture, and multiple different people build different relationships than just meeting with me the whole time.
Right.
But that's a couple different reasons. I was telling these students, I was like, hey, sometimes, you just go outside the box. My dad was always a proponent for seeing them in a social setting a couple times.
So the majority of my interviews are either like at a happy hour or it's a dinner. Because I think the conference room setting or bringing them into the office is just like,
stiff.
Yeah, super stiff. So,
especially us in suits. You're not in suits, but like it could be stiff here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like to be, at a happy hour, or even like dinner, right? It's like, how do they interact with the waiter or the waitress?
Mm-hmm.
Like what happens if a glass spills, or people are walking around, like how do they handle themselves in that environment? You learn a lot from, and I think a lot of time they're just like, and it's like, we interviewed a guy and we hired him a couple weeks ago, and after we hired him, he was like, I gotta tell you, like, I was pretty nervous ordering a drink for the interview. I'm like, why? He's like, I thought it was a test. I'm like, well, no, it wasn't. I mean, if you had ordered like 10 drinks, that'd have been a good indicator of, maybe how you were gonna handle yourself, but it was like, he was like, okay, I'll have one drink. That's what he's telling himself, he's like, but it was like he handled himself really well in the interview. Yeah. But I wouldn't have gathered from that time that he was pretty nervous because he handled himself well. But then talking to him after we hired him, like, oh man, I was really anxious about that.
Well, I think that you watch movies, you're like, is this a test?
Right.
Is it like, are they testing me? Should I be drinking?
Right.
Did the boss order a drink? Did the waiter bring him one with alcohol, or just fake me out?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
No, it's really good. So anything else on the accountability side we didn't cover, whether it's culture-wise, whether it, I know we had something in here about leaders needing to be perfect.
Yeah, I think, that question was, I think it was, I think inherently when you become a leader or a manager or something, like, people inherently just feel like they have to have all the right answers, or they have to be perfect 100% of the time, and I don't think it's about that at all, right? It's, you're a better leader if you can accept fault for, things that you've screwed up on, or, it's not even, disciplining someone for being wrong. It's, okay, we screwed up, but let's talk about it. Let's figure out what happened. Did we not have you in the right position? Did we not have you having the right tools to make that decision? So getting kind of through all of that is difficult sometimes.
You're not a robot, you're a human. We all make mistakes.
Yep.
So being vulnerable and sharing, hey, I made this mistake, here's what I did to fix it,
yep.
So you can move forward. Like, I love the delegation piece where I'll admit my faults early on. There are some things I wouldn't give up right away. Mm-hmm. And you met Ashley a long time ago. Like, she's phenomenal, and she's become my director of training and does all these amazing things. There's things I wasn't giving up to her where she finally had to say, Josh, you are wasting your time. You're not meeting with people. We need you in front of people. Let me do this.
Right.
Just explain to me what you're thinking. Because what it was there's like, we had a system and we had check boxes that I could check off for her to prepare whatever we needed. But there were certain things that I would have in my head that I wouldn't get out. Uh-huh. And so we couldn't put it into a system. She's like, all right, just tell me what your thoughts are when you're doing it then. I'm like, okay. And we do that. And then she's like, is this what you're looking for? I'm like, that's actually better than what I was looking for. That's better than what I would do. And so sometimes they go and surprise you like that. It's like, wait, no, this person's so skilled that, and I'm sitting here like this arrogant being, like no one can do this better than me. Right? That's rarely the case. There might be a few things that's true for, but the vast majority that's not true for. And we're like, I hire this really intelligent, amazing person, and I just let them run with it, and they're going to do it actually better than me.
Right. Yeah. Hire smart people and get out of their way.
Yeah. Now, again, inspect what you expect, trust but verify, those things until you feel like you fully trust that they're going to do the job. So I'm not saying like abstain from like, oh, just let it go.
Right.
Like, that's not the message we should be sending today, but
Right.
make sure you empower those awesome people to do their thing.
Yep.
So, all right, so we're going to play the word game.
Okay.
All right. So we didn't, I know you said you watched a couple of these, but so the biggest things we're looking for one-word answers.
Okay.
First thing that popped to mind, so I know that Chad didn't give you the words ahead of time because we want to make sure that you're actually thinking on the spot. So it could be one word or short phrase. I'm going to start with a few starts to sentences, and then I'm just going to give you one word.
Okay.
So there's going to be 4 fill in the blanks,
Okay.
and then we'll go with one words after. Ready?
Yep.
Life is.
Amazing.
People are.
Crazy.
Oh, I forgot to give you one rule, so I'm glad you didn't do this already. Can't repeat yourself.
Okay.
All right, because that was the hard rule that Chad made me do the first time he made me do it. So, I am.
Anxious.
Tomorrow is.
Friday.
You're right. It is Friday tomorrow. That is very factual, Shaun. You know what? The I am statement, though, like we've talked about, Chad, like that is some of the most, whatever you put after that word is extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting after this podcast where you, like, think about why you're anxious and how you can get not anxious. Because like telling yourself you're anxious, you're only going to be more anxious. So I hear people all the time with self-worth issues, like talk about like, you know, I suck today. Like, do you? Or I am not a good salesperson. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not going to be a good salesperson if you keep telling yourself not a good salesperson.
Right, exactly.
Like, whatever follows I am is extremely powerful, so I like that Chad put that in there for us. And I'm not saying that in judgment about the anxiety thing, because I feel anxious sometimes too, but you probably want to explore that.
Well, and it was, the one question that you guys had on here was, like, what makes you uncomfortable, or how do you get out of your comfort zone? Like, this podcast, out of my comfort zone. Like I don't do well talking about myself and some of those things. So it's like, and I've been asked to do more and more of these lately. Yeah. So it's been like, all right, just let's get over that fear, right? Let's get through it. So it's like easier to just say no and not even do it. But I'm like, no, just go do it. Let's get over that fear. Let's get over that anxiety. So
was that Victorson last year? Was Vic the one that said, just say yes, or was that? I think it might have been either him or Jim Tubbs. I want to say it was early on in our developing the podcast, and one of them said, there's so many things you get asked to do, and sometimes just saying yes opens the door to certain things you would have never thought was possible. Right. So getting outside of your comfort zone, that's where the growth is. So. Yep. Thank you for taking the chance. I saw you on Joe's, saw the video in the old. That's a unique setting, right?
Yeah, and again, I think, that was like the second one that I did. And again, that one for me was really anxious, right? Because I'm in the car, I'm like, what do I look at? There's a tree, someone's walking by. Like,
Joe's talking to me over here.
I'm like, do I look at Joe? Do I look at the camera? It was, so there was a little bit of anxiety with that, and it was like right away in the morning, and it was cold. I'm like, he's like, oh, and then he was like, the fan was running. He's like, oh, I got to turn that down. I'm like, oh my, there's too much stuff going on.
I can identify the first time I was on news for like promoting one of our cancer golf events, or one of the, maybe his man of the year for Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Can't remember what it was, but first time I was going to be on the news, there's 2 cameras that are facing you, but only one of them is actually recording. Mm-hmm. And then you have the news anchor that's next to you, asking you questions or whatever. Right. I didn't know which camera to look at. I didn't know to look here. So like I felt like when I watched it back, because I had my wife record it, I was like, I saw my eyes darting between the 2 cameras. I'm like, all right, I gotta get more comfortable with this going forward, and then I have. But all right, back to the word game. Integrity.
Important.
Comfort.
Break it.
Money.
Useful.
I'd agree. Friction.
What's the word I'm looking for? Awkward.
Yeah. Inspire or inspiration.
Inspire or inspiration?
Inspire or inspiration. I just use either one of those, whichever pops to mind.
Motivating.
Good. Impact.
Important.
All right. So I warned you, favorite book of all time that you want to recommend, or most recent read that you want to shout out.
So it's funny because you hit on the interview question of having multiple people interview, and I've been a big fan of the Patrick Lencioni stuff lately. So The Ideal Team Player is a great one, and then 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Yeah.
Those are great books.
What's this first one? Never Eat Alone, I think. Anyhow, both those books are great.
Yeah,
I agree. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I took my team through again in January.
Yeah,
great book.
We did that when Matt Pletzer, he has kind of a framework around that, so we had him walk us through that. It was a 2-day event with our whole team, and that was completely eye-opening. It was like it removed a lot of barriers within the team, and just the avoidance of conflict, right? Like and if DISC profiles, like I'm a high S, so like I'm not a big fan of conflict, don't want to do it, and so it's like when you get into tough situations or conversations, how do you get outside of that, and it's like, so we had some tough conversations where I think then a lot of people felt like, okay, he's not going to judge me if I have this conflict.
Yeah.
So.
That's good. And knowing yourself is so important to know that, like, especially as now being, one of the bosses or the boss, like avoiding conflict, you can't do it.
Right.
And so you got to know yourself to know, like, okay, what mindset or emotional stuff do I need to get rid of, or what mindset do I need to be in to go and have this tough conversation so that it can be as effective as possible.
Yeah.
So whereas me, like, I actually have to pull myself back because I don't shy away from conflict at all. So I have to work on my words, on how direct I am, so I don't actually offend someone, but the message is received the way it needs to be received.
Right.
So we're exact opposite in that respect, I would say.
That's why we get along well.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so how does our audience get in touch with you, follow the company, and learn more about either you, or maybe they want a job, or maybe they want to hire you?
Yep, LinkedIn is great. You can find me on LinkedIn, Shaun Trudell. Automation Arts, again, you can follow our page on LinkedIn as well. www.automationarts.com. My email address is fine too, Shaun@automationarts.com.
Yeah, awesome. I do want to shout out, because we were talking about it ahead of time, if for any Bucks fans that haven't been over there, Automation Arts did a lot of that work, and he was talking about the Mecca, and how big is that screen?
37 feet.
So 37-foot Jumbotron at the Mecca, which is a bar and grill right across from the Fiserv.
Yeah.
That was not open last summer when we were there for our annual meeting, so I want to check out that Jumbotron.
Yeah, 60 televisions, outdoor TVs. I mean, I think there's not a seat in the house that you're sitting in that you can't see at least 2 televisions. So.
Hell of a sports bar.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing.
Well, Shaun, thanks for taking your valuable time on being here today.
Thanks.
I know our audience learned a lot today. This was great on accountability, and hopefully people can take away some lessons for their own businesses, or maybe just personal relationships from this. Have a great week, everyone. Stay safe.